Hello guys, my name's Max. Ignore this little mic contraption here. I'll set that up for me. Today, I hope that I am not as awkward as last time I filmed, but we'll try. So, we wanted to film a video on Pseudo Memories, which is essentially when an alter, a dissociative identity disorder personality, comes into the headspace. They already have memories from like before they came in the headspace. This happens sometimes, and people theorize that whatever trauma or memories that an alter has before they came into the headspace, like basically represents something, some sort of trauma that happened to the body in some way. That's a little more palatable, which I don't know, because a lot of the traumas that I have, they don't really make sense in that context. Like, I just don't feel like they really resemble what's happened in the body that much. But if you have an alter that has developed taste and interest and styles and stuff like that, it's kind of only natural that when they get to a certain point of being developed enough, they kind of start to have their own experiences and things, and I feel like that's just kind of where I fall. So with that, I wanted to just make a video showing you how detailed they can be, and how I don't think a lot of people know that pseudo memories that an alter has can be just as detailed as your memories are to you, or as L's memories and the body's memories are, which are things that actually happen. So, just know that anything I talk about from here on are things that didn't actually happen. They are memories that I have from a previous life before being in this headspace that didn't happen and didn't take place, but I want to stress really hard that they feel really real and they feel like they did happen. And that sounds really trippy, and it is really trippy, and sometimes when I'm in the body and I think about it too much, I start to feel like, well, what if that was real and where I am right now isn't? So just to put it into perspective, they feel extremely real. So I'll start here. My name is Max, or Sam. I am 16. I look like this. I don't know. I like to just see what people look like. It gives me a better perspective on like their personality and stuff for some reason. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. I was born in 2005, April 2005, and I live in a 2-story house with my mom and my older sister. My dad was never around. I don't think I've ever met him, but I know that we have a lot of pensions, and we have things and money that gets sent into us that we live off of. So my mom never had to work for that reason. And that's how I know that my dad is around and he is very successful. But I have no knowledge of why I've never met him or why he wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with me or my sister. My mom's a really great woman. She is the kindest, most patient person I've ever met. Even whenever I was not good to her, she was always good to me. She taught us lots of things as kids, like she taught me how to bake and stuff, and like that's one of the small things I remember from my childhood. I was also very loud and energetic, and we went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with ADHD, but my mom did not want to put me on medication because she just didn't believe in that kind of stuff. Not that she didn't believe it would work, but she just didn't want us like putting things like that in our bodies if we didn't have to. So I did not get on medication when I was a kid. That is most of what I remember from like childhood. Now in middle school, I can start to remember more things. I remember that I was a class clown. I was very outgoing. People thought it was funny. And I would just like make fun of the teacher lightly, like I wouldn't get in trouble, but like throw shit around. Like I was pretty disruptive, but like I kind of got away with it. And then in high school, things started getting bad for me. And this is where I'll offer kind of a trigger warning, because I'm going to start going into things like self-harm, eating disorders, things like that. When I entered high school, people started like wanting to do things with their life. Like people started like making college plans and like figuring out what they wanted to do with themselves, and people also started dating. And I just felt kind of stuck. Like when I tried to think of my future, all I could see was just like this dark abyss. And that's really scary. But that's not all that was going on. My ADHD and depression were starting to get the best of me, and I wasn't doing well on any of my work. In fact, I just wasn't doing any of it. Like I would just basically sleep in class all day because I was so exhausted and I was failing all of my classes. And nobody else was. Nobody that I was friends with was. And there was also the fact that I am bisexual. At the time, I didn't know that. I just considered myself whatever the default was, which at the time, the default was just kind of straight. So I guess I just considered myself that. But the thing is that I didn't really know this about myself until recently, but like I can't really form any sort of sexual attraction to anyone unless I form a romantic attraction first. And in high school, I just never met any girls to where I felt that way towards. And so people were like, "Hey Sam, why aren't you dating people yet? What's going on?" And all my friends were getting girlfriends, and I was just had zero interest in anything like that. And I did really enjoy my time with my friends. But there was one friend in particular, and I didn't know it at the time. His name was Matt. I didn't know it at the time, but I was kind of crushing on him. Oh, this is so fucking awkward to talk about. Oh my god. So sometimes I would just look at him and I didn't even know what that feeling was. So I would just be like, man, he's like my best friend. Like, I love him so much. Like, I just want to hug him. Like, we should just buy a flat together and like live in it forever. Like, I didn't know what that feeling was. And that's really fucking confusing whenever nobody around you seems to have their brain working romantically or friendship-wise the same way yours seems to be working, and everybody else seems to know what to do with themselves. And this is fucking embarrassing too, but sometimes like he would do this thing like Matt where he would just like fake try to like touch me, you know, like when straight friends, like groups of straight boys in high school do that thing where like they make gay jokes about each other and like pretend that they like each other for a joke. He would like pretend to be about to like rub up on me or something, and I'd have to be like, don't do that, man. Don't do that. It was making me feel some type of way. As I was saying, what else was going on is that the shit with my dad was starting to catch up with me. Like, where was he? And why was he disinterested in me? Because other kids didn't have dads sometimes, but they knew why. They knew where he was, or they knew why he didn't give a shit. But it's like, this guy's successful. Like, he has every ability, and he's in a good position to come and see me whenever, but he just didn't care enough to. And that's really hard. So I was sleeping in all my classes. I was failing. I was not doing any homework. I was getting high all the time. And I started just taking all that out on like my mom sometimes. Not like I wouldn't seek it out, but like if she tried to ask me what was wrong, like I didn't know how to even explain that to myself, let alone somebody else. So I remember one day I came home and it was late as fuck. Like I was hanging out with friends, but I was not telling my mom where I was going. And I came home and she was sitting there and she confronted me, and like I just yelled at her and I ran up to my room and I I got an X-Acto knife out of my drawer, and I just like wanted to do something with my hands. Like I was just so agitated, and I cut myself for the first time, and that from then on just became what I did. And sometimes I'd be hanging out with my friends, and I would just space out and just feel so out of place, and people would be like, "Hey Sam, what's wrong? Like, you good?" I'd be like, "Yeah," and just come home, and that's what I would do to cope. And yeah. Because I knew like I was not being the nicest to my mom, and because I was failing and I didn't know what my future was going to be, and I just felt so different and out of place from everybody, I started just wanting to destroy myself. I didn't like myself. I didn't want to exist. I wanted to slowly disappear. So now I didn't ever like think to myself that I thought I was fat or anything. Usually I think when people with eating disorders think that they're fat, it's kind of just a manifestation of a different insecurity they have. Maybe I did. With the culture of being like a teenage boy, you just don't say things like that. Like, that's just not something that you admit or say out loud. Anyway, but I just didn't like myself. So I started just not feeding myself. I just wouldn't do it. I would eat like a couple Doritos. Like there was a day where like I just ate a Dorito and then just shoved the bag under my bed and then just fell asleep to my stomach grumbling, and I just hated myself and didn't want to give myself any food. And I just wanted myself to waste away. I just felt like I didn't deserve it. I just felt like a bad person. So I eventually started losing weight a lot. Like I was not looking good. Like people could tell. And I was in school one day and I was falling asleep on my desk. I had my arm like outstretched kind of like this. You could see a little bit under my sleeve. And this girl named Michaela, who I talked to a lot, we were cool, she was like sitting over there and she was like, "Hey Sam, what's that on your wrist?" And I was like so lethargic, I just pulled my sleeve up and I was like, "Cat scratch." And she was like, "But you don't have a cat." And I was like, like I just grunted at her basically and just tried to go back to sleep and pretend that that did not happen. And then soon after that, I was called down to the counseling office, and she talked to me and she was like, "Sam, do you know any reason why you might be called down here today?" And I was just like, "No." And she was like, "Your attendance is really close to you getting a truancy ticket. You are failing all of your classes. And we had a student come in and tell us that she saw a scar on your arm. So are you okay? Do you want to tell us what may be going on?" And I just like was like, it was like in the movies where like everything around you just fades out and it becomes echoed and it just focuses on you. And I was just like, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't want to be here anymore. And then after that, which is probably one of the most vivid memories I have, was my mom picking me up. And she was in the front seat and I was in the back seat, diagonal from her, just legs turned away, just with my face pressed against the window. I could look down at my body, which was just not how it should be looking. And I remember my mom just being like, "Sam, what's wrong?" And I just ignored her. I was driven to the ER, and they determined that I wasn't a threat to myself, but I was prescribed ADHD meds and I was prescribed antidepressants. And after that, I started taking the ADHD meds, which did make my eating disorder worse for a bit because it suppresses your appetite and stuff, and I genuinely just didn't want to eat. But also the antidepressants were helping slightly, but of course there's more issues than that. You know, like if you have trauma or like there's things going on around you, like increasing your serotonin isn't gonna like make that go away. So I was not all the way okay, but I do remember the last conversation with Matt that I can remember before I came here was we were sitting on this cliff looking over like a part of Vancouver that we usually sit on sometimes when we talk, and he was like, hey, Michaela told me she saw, like he couldn't even say what it was. Like that was the culture of being a teen boy. Like he couldn't even say cuts on your wrist. And I was like, yeah. He was like, you never told me that. I was like, I just didn't know how to say anything. He was like, I get that. Because he could always get it. Like, that's one of the reasons I liked him a lot, is that his mom wasn't always nice to him. And so he could get having dysfunction. And I could tell he understood, even if he wasn't able to explain that. Even though he didn't know how to say it, I could just tell from the look in his eyes that he did understand. And it was kind of embarrassing, but I was just like, hey, like, can I hug you? And he was like, yeah. And I hugged him. And that's the last thing I remember. Now, I didn't come here. Like, I didn't, like, go drive here and then just start living in somebody's head. Like, I don't remember the transition from being there to being here. I just know I'm here now. And for the first parts of being here, I didn't know I was an alter even. Which sounds weird. Like, how do you have all these memories and you didn't know you were an alter? Because we were such a closely ingrained system, as in we didn't have amnesia, we could hear each other's thoughts a lot of the time, and Elle was not supposed to know we were a system. I couldn't either, because if I did, they would. So I didn't know until Elle found out we were a system, and then I knew who I was, and I knew all that, but I was still cut off from my memories. And then at one point, we were stoned, and I was thinking, it was pretty shortly after we figured out we had DID, actually. I was thinking, like, I started getting flashes of my house and my sister and my mom, and I started remembering. And from then on, I just can remember more and more bits and pieces of what happened. But yeah. Hey, it's Sam editing this video, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm sorry this was so fucking depressing. Like, I didn't realize it was gonna be that depressing. And sorry that I sound depressed as fuck. I kind of am for some reason. So thank you for watching. If you are interested in my life or whatever. Yeah. Thank you. I hope this highlighted what it's like to have pseudo memories and how vivid they can be, because that's how it was. I don't know. This was Max, your friendly alter friend. I'll see you later. Bye bye.